In April 2012, in a quiet suburb on the western fringes of Brisbane, a 43-year-old woman went missing, leaving her husband, young children, and the whole community praying for her safe return.
Someone knew really where she was.
Trawling creeks, trawling parks, searching for any sign of her. A mother of 3 beautiful young girls does not just walk out on her kids.
The discovery of her body 10 days later revealed the secrets and lies that kept her hidden and unveiled the double life of her killer.
Impossible that she would have walked that far.
This was a very, very juicy story. Gerard had been having an affair. Everyone wanted to hear about the scandal.
The story of Gerard Baden-Clay and the death of his wife Allison was a crime that shook Australia. In 2012, Allison Baden Clay, a married mother of 3 young daughters, went missing in Brisbane's western suburbs. Her husband claimed she went for a walk and never came home. What would unfold over the course of the next few months would shock the town and the entire nation to the core.
I moved to Brookfield around about 1992, 93, because it was a semi-rural community. I thought it was a good place to bring up children.
It's 15, 20 minutes from the CBD. They say you could have country lifestyle, city convenience. Beautiful surroundings, beautiful community, lovely school, showgrounds, pony club, general store. It had everything. Ticked all the boxes for where you'd want to raise a family.
It's a very safe family area, a lot of money out that way. So crime in Brisbane does not usually happen out there.
Very little crime at all.
Police emergency, what's your location?
Good morning, Brookfield.
And what's happening there?
My wife isn't home. And I don't know where she is.
What's your name, first of all?
I'm sorry. Gerard.
And your last name, Gerard?
Baden Clay.
And what's your wife's name?
Allison with 2 L's.
In the early hours of Friday the 20th of April 2012, Gerard Baden Clay, a local real estate agent from Brookfield, reported his wife Allison missing. Police were quick to respond and word began to spread about the disappearance.
A friend from Brisbane phoned up and knew the real estate connection and said, you know, Allison Baden Clay's gone missing, and I was just in shock.
He was this beautiful Allison Baden Clay, this mum with 3 beautiful young girls, and they were a well-known family in the community.
People don't generally go missing in Brookfield, so it was a surprise.
It was treated like just any other missing person, perhaps, you know, a mum who'd gone off for a walk.
I don't want to be alarmist. I tried the 131 number, but just went on forever.
Yep. All right, Gerard. I'll get police to come and see you, okay? All right. Thanks, Gerard. Bye-bye.
45-year-old Gerard Baden Clay married Allison in 1997. The couple travelled the world before settling in Brookfield in 2000, where they had 3 daughters. The family were well known and loved, and when Allison disappeared, police immediately established a task force and rallied the community into action.
Obviously there was deep concern, and at that stage no one knew what had happened. Nobody in the general community, that is.
I got a call from the police asking to use our clubhouse as a command post.
The search was structured from Brookfield Oval, and I remember the emergency services out trawling creeks, trawling parks, trawling the neighbourhoods, searching for any sign of her. Search parties started forming. SES workers were looking in all areas, and volunteers were turning out, families in the area, neighbours. You could tell that it was a close-knit community who really cared for this woman.
I went down there to see the police, and that's when I met Allison's parents. And extended family.
Brookfield Oval, in the centre of town, acted as a focal point for the police investigation and was located just 200 metres from the Baden-Clay home. As the search progressed with local residents and volunteers involved, police held an appeal for information. It fell to Allison's parents, Jeff and Priscilla Dickey, determined to do whatever it took to find their daughter, to face the daunting task of speaking to the media.
Please, please help us to find our dear Allison. Our lives will never be the same. We must find her.
When Allison's parents did make the public appeal, it was incredibly emotional, incredibly upsetting. You could tell that they were so worried, they were so concerned about Allison's disappearance.
They were concerned for her well-being, very concerned, and she was much loved, well-loved person.
I think it became one of the most covered crime cases in Australia in about a decade. There was huge interest. It became not just a state story of relevance in Brisbane. Sydney was interested. For Sydney to be interested, that's big. So the network, it became a network story. And from there, we really had to be mindful of that and not missing anything, not missing any detail, not missing any scandal, not missing any reaction outside of the house, not missing a shot. We had to be really, really mindful, and that's when it became so life-consuming as well.
Whilst Allison's devoted parents worked with the media, and the police desperate for any clues that may help find their beloved daughter, the actions of Baden-Clay himself started to raise questions.
Normally, someone's partner goes missing. They're there. They're distraught. They're upset. They can't sleep. They're just frantic.
Very strange, very strange. I thought he would have been down there from dawn to dusk like Jeff and Priscilla were.
Where the hell was he? Why wasn't he out in these search parties?
As Gerard Baden-Clay retreated further from public scrutiny, the media became more insistent on finding him, and within days were tracking his every move.
It was 4 days after Allison went missing. We knew at that time it was very strange that Gerard hadn't been out actively looking for his wife and had moved in with his parents. My cameraman and I went straight to his parents' home and saw the door open. So we ran over to the driveway and Gerard did walk straight to us. And I thought, wow, we're very lucky he's going to say something here.
I'm trying to look after my children at the moment. They've got 3 young girls, and we really trust that the police are doing everything they can to find my wife. And
it was strange that he wasn't just standing there and saying, please, I beg you, give me some information about my missing wife. It was very unusual. I thought his eye contact was very strange. He didn't look at me. He kept kind of looking back and forth, looking to the ground, and his voice was quite high. It was quite strained.
We just hope that she'll come home soon. And I need to go now to an appointment.
From his sister's body language, she looks so nervous. There'll be people who'll be able to read your body language, read the intonation in your voice.
Being a crime reporter is very difficult. You've got to try and not become emotionally involved in a case, but that's very difficult. You're hearing a lot of horrific detail, a lot of detail that the public is really never going to hear. But I knew after doing that interview with Gerard Baden-Clay on the driveway that day that this was a different case. In 12 years, I have probably covered around 30 murders, been exposed to a lot of terrible detail, had to talk to many victims of crime, and always trying to do that with respect. And in some ways you can become desensitised to a lot of information you're hearing. But I would really say this story became a career-defining moment for me, because never had there been such public interest in a case. We watched that tape over and over, and everyone commented on his eye contact or lack of. My cameraman said, something's not right with this guy. He was not genuine. It was not a concerned husband. It was not a desperate husband looking to find his wife. I felt he was covering something up. I did speak to one of my police contacts, and his first question when he heard that I had interviewed him was, Did you see any scratches on his face?
On the right-hand side of Gerard's face were a number of distinct and possibly incriminating deep scratch marks.
At that point in time, I didn't know there were scratches. I wasn't looking for them. I went straight back to the tape. I had a look at it, and Gerard had been shielding that side of his face. When police did arrive at the house, he was very cool, he was quite calm, but they immediately noticed the scratches.
I should clarify, I cut myself shaving this morning and everybody has said that looks suspicious.
It does.
And that's part of the reason I think that you're here.
It doesn't look like a shaving cut.
In 2012, Gerard Baden-Clay called police to report that his wife Allison was missing. When police responded, they noticed scratch marks on his face, which he claimed were from a shaving accident.
I should clarify, I cut myself shaving this morning and everybody has said that looks suspicious.
This explanation raised immediate suspicions, and police were keen to investigate further into the life of the real estate agent, who was familiar to residents in the Brookfield area.
Gerard was very well known in the community. He was this apparent high-profile real estate agent. He was president of the Chamber of Commerce at some point. He made himself known wherever he went.
Probably the first I became aware of the family was the Baden Clay team was this trio, Gerard Baden-Clay's father, his mother and Gerard himself, all wearing the gold jackets, the franchise they belonged to. I must admit, right from the start, I thought that it was a little bit on the back foot for an agent wanting to promote himself to have his mum and dad there. I felt I couldn't take them seriously.
He was just trying to be too cool.
A lot of self-importance, really not seriously in touch with his audience, not communicating on a real level. I know a lot of people were taken in by him. I felt he was phony and he was condescending and there wasn't a real person there.
Oh, he was someone you couldn't sort of like warm to as such.
Word of mouth is extremely important, and it doesn't matter so much whether you wear the latest suit or what you drive. It's whether when they talk to you, whether they feel you're relating on a genuine level and that they can trust you.
A lot of people knew him. He was a bit of a man about town, I guess. And this is what really attracted the community, the audience, to this case.
Gerard Baden-Clay's reputation as a respectable professional and husband continued to come under scrutiny when details surfaced that would fuel further speculation and doubt.
We'd found out that Gerard had been involved in a car crash.
Just after 3 p.m. on Sunday the 22nd of April, Gerard was involved in a minor car accident. Police revealed that Gerard had undergone medical tests for visible injuries on his body the day Allison went missing and was being recalled for further examinations when the crash occurred.
He was actually on his way to undergo more DNA testing to have more photographs of injuries sustained, the scratches on his face, the markings on his chest.
Gerard had told police that he suffered a reaction to a caterpillar bite, which left red abrasions on his chest and neck. Tests would later prove that no species of caterpillar that could cause such reactions were present in the area where the Baden-Clays lived.
Perhaps the car crash that he was involved in, he was trying to disguise the injuries already there with fresh ones from the car crash.
I just thought there's more to this than meets the eye.
We understood why the whole thing was looking incredibly suspicious.
As the search for Allison continued, rumours began to circulate around the town, and the Baden-Clay family appeared to close ranks.
Generally speaking, the media was treading with caution and concern, and I feel respect for Allison's family. It was a very different front in regard to the Baden-Clays. They were always trying to hide from us, even escaping through neighbours' yards, jumping into different cars, borrowing friends' cars. It was just always quite strange that they weren't more cooperative with the media in the search for Allison.
I found it quite distasteful the way his parents were reacting to it, and that they didn't appear to have any real concern.
There was a team A in the community and a team B. There's a larger team supporting the Dickies.
As Allison's family maintained a vigil at Task Force Base, police asked Brookfield residents to search their properties, while over 400 emergency service volunteers on foot and horseback continued the search for Allison 10 days after she went missing.
The area was also quite residential, but there were some big properties as well. It was a very wealthy area, so police had encouraged landowners to search whenever they could as well to see if there was any trace of Allison, any clothing, anything which might help them with the investigation. So the community really became involved and part of this search as well, and that, I guess, really showed the concern for her, and also what I guess we could say was, I think, most people involved were expecting that a body would be found. You know, a mother of 3 beautiful young girls does not just walk out on her kids.
The Brisbane River is a good place for kayaking, and it's really nice to go kayaking early in the morning. Probably most people don't even know exists. It's very quiet in that part of the river.
Darryl Joyce, a professor of horticulture and resident of Brisbane's western suburbs, was enjoying the first morning of his holidays.
The first time I knew that a lady had gone missing was on the news. It kept going on for days and days. I became sort of most aware when they'd sort of set up a mannequin of the missing lady, dressed her up in the way that she was when she'd gone missing. And because it was local, naturally we were all wanted to know what was happening. Took a special interest in it.
Colo Creek is 14 kilometres from Brookfield. It's a small side creek that flows into the Brisbane River. Famed for its nature reserves and rich vegetation, the river and side creeks are often inaccessible on foot.
The Colo Creek itself, when you come off the Brisbane River, it's got a wide opening. I paddled upstream because that's the best way to go with the tides that day. And as I got closer to the bridge, I saw a body lying on the creek bank immediately underneath. And then as I got closer, there was a sort of smell. I still kept going past just to try and understand what was going on, and then I recognised the clothes, because that mannequin that they had in the park somewhere in Brookfield was dressed in this sort of 3/4 length pants, I think it was. And I figured out what it was, and I didn't stay around. There's no way you can get out of the kayak and do anything there anyway. You just end up falling in the water. So I just shot home and rang the police.
The woman's body, found yesterday on a creek bed, yet to be formally identified.
We're treating it very seriously that it may be her.
The grim discovery marked the tragic end of the 10-day search. The body was confirmed to be that of Allison Baden Clay. Questions were now asked as to how had this much-loved mother of 3 ended up on the edge of a creek bed 14 kilometres from her family home.
Police are appealing to anyone that may have seen anything suspicious on the night that Miss Baden Clay went missing. In particular, they're asking for people that may have seen one of the 2 family cars, any evidence that there may have been some suspicious activity in this area.
Allison's body had been found, and a sinister side had been put to the whole investigation. This officially became a murder investigation.
In 2012, Allison Baden Clay, a married mother of 3 young daughters, had gone missing in Brisbane's western suburbs. After 10 days of extensive searches and round-the-clock efforts by police and volunteers, a canoeist made a grisly discovery in a creek 14 kilometres from Allison's home. Tragically for her family, what was a missing persons case was now a murder investigation.
It was so sad for her family. incredibly sad. There were 3 little girls without a mother.
I felt it deeply because of my happy memories there with my family, and this is an horrific act.
When we did hear the news, it was incredibly sad. It was, and I know all of the police involved were very moved, saddened, upset for these 3 little girls who are now without a mother, upset for Allison's parents, her siblings, the community at large, her friends, because they'd all gathered around to try and find this woman who was, you know, a kind, loving, beautiful, professional, incredibly intelligent.
As Allison's family and friends came to terms with their tragic loss, police intensified their investigation, and further information surfaced that would cast a shadow on what had appeared to be a flawless family.
After Allison's body was found, this idea of a perfect family in Brookfield was really shattered. Information started to come out, or was revealed to us, that Gerard had been having an affair. We found out who the woman was that he was having an affair with, Tony McHugh.
He said to me, "I need you to know that I love you and that I am going to be leaving my wife."
Tony McHugh began working for Gerard in 2008. Their affair began in August of that year. When Allison discovered her husband's infidelity in September 2011 and demanded the couple seek counselling, Gerard ended the affair briefly until the lovers rekindled their romance just 3 months later.
I remember the day when she was driven into Indooroopilly CIB into the police station and wearing glasses, and she was obviously not wanting any media exposure, but she was the unknown woman, the mistress, and pretty much straight away the feeling within the community as well was very negative towards her, obviously very negative towards Gerard.
His philandering, if you like, wasn't a total secret through the community and through the real estate industry.
Gerard Baden-Clay had made promises to Tony McHugh regarding leaving his wife. The night before Allison went missing, she learned that both women would also be attending an industry conference the next day. McHugh was livid at the possibility of a confrontation with Allison, and in a heated phone call with Gerard, she demanded he tell his wife about the affair.
This was a very, very juicy story. Every little bit of detail about Gerard Baden-Clay was just being lapped up out in the public. Everyone wanted to hear about the scandal. Everyone wanted to hear about what he'd done, what was the latest.
If you sat down and tried to get a well-off area, happy family, and then create this dark sort of background mystery, you couldn't have written a better story.
As police dug deeper, the private life of Gerard Baden-Clay began to untangle spectacularly in public view as more startling revelations came to light.
We also began to find out that Gerard was in a lot of financial difficulty. He'd also bumped up Allison's life insurance policy.
Gerard Baden-Clay immediately lodged a claim on his wife's life insurance the day her body was found.
It's a supreme arrogance and feeling that he could just pull the wool over everybody's eyes and they'd buy it. They'd just buy it.
All of these factors were really pointing towards something incredibly suspicious about this case. It was not a golden, perfect family. There were a lot of cracks in this marriage.
Affairs, financial difficulties, life insurance policies, and a major task force investigating his wife's murder. The deck was being stacked against Gerard Baden-Clay, and every detail of his personal life was played out in public view.
All eyes were on Gerard Baden-Clay, so that ramped up our coverage to a whole other level. It's pretty much 24/7 coverage of his parents' house.
I don't think I've ever known a tragedy of this kind to have so much publicity. Quite often you'll hear about it on the news, and you might hear it in the morning. You'd be lucky if you hear it in the evening, 1 or 2 days, and it's gone.
Everyone was talking about this case. It was a massive ratings period for TV news bulletins in Brisbane at that time.
With the salacious details of Gerard Baden-Clay's life now publicly exposed, police carefully considered every detail of the case, and their investigation intensified to include personal possessions.
There continued to be a huge police presence at Gerard Baden-Clay's parents' house. On several occasions in the coming days and weeks, detectives would go to the house. I remember one particular day they left carrying a lot of brown paper bags, so we knew that they were taking evidence to examine back at the police station.
The location of Allison's body also helped police with vital clues that would identify her movements before and after death. Dr. Gordon Guymer, a forensic botanist and director of the Queensland Herbarium, was instrumental in assisting police in the murder investigation.
I worked on the leaf material that was collected from the head and shoulders and hair of Allison Baden Clay. Then I could identify there was leaves from 6 different species. There was no other material, no other botanical material, which I would have expected. There would have been some grass seeds or some other material, but there wasn't, which I was a bit surprised. So then I rang the police and said that now I'd like to go to Colo Creek and then to the house.
Forensic experts revealed that Allison's body had lay undisturbed on the bank of Colo Creek for 10 days. Dr. Guymer had expected more local plant material to be present on her body, and the lack of this seemed unusual.
I did a full survey of that Colo Creek area where the body was found, recorded all the species, got my binoculars out and scanned up and down the creek, and basically could only see 2 of the 6 species that I'd found in her hair.
These missing species led Dr. Guymer to one inevitable conclusion. The other plant matter must have come from a different location, suggesting her body had been moved to the creek from elsewhere.
And then we moved to 593 Brookfield Road to the house, and all the 6 species were present. So then I went back to the detective and I said, I can see six species, all 6 species are there.
Dr. Guymer's botanical discoveries were proof that specific leaves from the Brookfield home were present in Allison's hair. This then begged the question, how did those leaves get there?
The only explanation I'd sort of heard put forward by the husband was that she'd gone for a walk early in the morning and then, something had gone wrong. I know that it's a long way from where she would have been walking at Brookfield, and impossible that she would have walked that far.
I decided that I needed to do far more investigation and more or less walked that 14 kilometres, recorded all the species along that route, and particularly the 6 species that were found in her hair. There was no part of that road which had all 6 species, so therefore it was impossible that the leaves in her hair could have got there by walking the 14 kilometres from her house to Colo Creek.
"43-year-old Allison Baden Clay's body had been found under a bridge 10 days after she was first reported missing. While her remains underwent forensic testing to determine what had happened to the young mother of 3, Dr. Gordon Guymer's botanical expertise led to an alarming discovery that shifted the focus to the Brookfield home, where the evidence suggested Allison had died.
The presence of species in the forensic evidence is critical in looking at crime reconstruction and possible scenarios of where Allison was at certain times. On the botanical evidence alone and a possible scenario, she was likely to be on the back patio area. That's consistent with the leaves, the age of the leaves, the species that occurred in her hair. So if the scenario is that she got to the car, she must have been carried to the car from the rear patio and then no doubt transported to Colo Creek. There's no doubt about that because there's no other species that link her to any other site, and the evidence would indicate possibly carried and then dumped into Colo Creek. When I was there, you got lots of seeds and grasses on your clothing, would indicate that she must have been carried and put into Colwell Creek.
More shocking revelations began to surface as police carried out forensic tests on Allison's car. Traces of her blood were discovered in the boot and on the door.
I remember a day that detectives arrived at the house. That day in particular, we knew something was going on. We all got particularly anxious. We thought, wow, I wonder if today's going to be the day that they'll arrest him. Everyone assumed that was going to happen, and we were just waiting. We were on 24-hour standby.
This whole scenario is like a classic Agatha Christie story.
Just 6 weeks after the discovery of Allison's body at Colwell Creek, police were focusing their investigations on one suspect. Gerard Baden-Clay was taken to the police headquarters and interviewed.
Gerard had gone into the station with his lawyer. We all sprinted, jumped into the news cars to get over to Indooroopilly CIB. Everyone was set up, ready to go. And I remember it wasn't a long period of time before Gerard Baden-Clay's lawyer did surface and said that his client had been charged, so he'd effectively been charged with the murder of his wife.
Denying any involvement, Gerard was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. The elaborate web of lies and deceit this apparently devoted husband and father had spun began to unravel dramatically in public view.
It was adrenaline overload. We were expecting it to happen, but I think everyone was almost in shock. I don't feel anyone was surprised, but there was a real relief, and finally this has happened. Finally this guy is going to have to face court. I'd become so engrossed and involved in this case for 2 months that it really was a bittersweet moment when he was arrested. When a young mother is killed, is found dead, and she's got 3 young girls, and you see how grief-stricken her family is, it just doesn't affect the immediate family as well. It's friends, it's the wider community. It was shocking.
My feelings were towards the daughters, towards her parents, the Dickies, and trying not to, express my anger towards him.
With the local real estate agent in custody, everybody braced themselves for what was sure to be an explosive trial. After 2 years of investigations, 1,500 lines of inquiry, and 500 witness statements, the trial began in June 2014, with police and prosecutors confident in their case against Gerard Baden-Clay.
Yes, this is a very challenging case. I'm not there to join the dots, I'm there to provide the dots. And I was hopeful that the evidence I gave in court assisted the jury in making their decision.
Really interesting to see then how all of the pieces fell into place. There's little bits of information that were trickled to us, and that made sense. It was all fascinating to follow it and see how it all played out in the courts.
At the very start of the trial, Gerard Baden-Clay pleaded not guilty, claiming he had nothing to do with his wife's disappearance or death. During the court proceedings, extracts from Allison's diary were read aloud to the jury, revealing a wife and mother struggling with her marriage.
What really struck a chord with me was how troubled this marriage was, and information that came out from Allison's diaries. Outside, they looked like the perfect family. Successful real estate agent, beautiful, kind, friendly, loving, professional woman. They had 3 beautiful kids. Everyone loved the family. Well, definitely loved Allison and her children anyway. And what was so sad is that there was this woman who was battling on the inside and was not revealing any of that information to anyone.
Allison's diary revealed a heartbreaking existence within a troubled marriage. Insecurities arising from Gerard's continued infidelity, his refusal to be intimate, psychological and emotional abuse resulting in frustrations regarding body image and self-worth destabilised a strong and proud woman.
What went on behind closed doors, a lot of people didn't know about it, even though her friends did pick up certain behaviours and said they didn't like Gerard Baden-Clay. But Allison continued to gloss over it all.
Following 2 years of investigations, a month-long trial and 5 days of deliberations. On the 15th of July 2014, jurors delivered their unanimous verdict.
Guilty. Gerard Baden Clay went from suburban real estate salesman to cold-blooded killer.
Gerard Baden Clay, a 46-year-old father of 3, was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of his wife, Allison, and ordered to serve a minimum term of 15 years.
Thank God this bastard who's done this to this beautiful, caring, kind, lovely woman is going to be behind bars.
Yes, it was a very rewarding experience working with the Queensland Police, and I was very impressed with the way they operated, how professional they were, how precise, meticulous.
We never got to meet Allison, but dealing with the Dickey family and the extended family, after this lengthy investigation, I feel we know her.
It was relief for the family of Allison Baden Clay.
So those girls didn't lose just the mother, they lost my father as well.
I hope also for the daughters that whilst they've been robbed of the pleasure of their mother for the rest of their life, that I feel there's something of her spirit will always be with them. And I just feel that her love is with them.
For the family and friends of Allison, however, the relief was short-lived. In December 2015, after lodging an appeal, Gerard Baden Clay's conviction for murder was substituted for one of manslaughter.
There were gasps as 3 judges handed down their ruling, saying there was not enough evidence to prove he intended to kill Allison.
The news of the downgrading was met with widespread criticism, not least from Allison's friends and relatives.
Justice has not been served to Allison and her family.
The condemnation of the downgrading has helped shine a light on the growing and troubling issue of domestic violence, a problem that is affecting the whole of Australia.
Domestic violence happens everywhere, but she's really highlighted to the wider community that it's something we need to give focus to.
I think what it highlighted for me is that the media were focusing on what they didn't even know was a common problem.
Diane Mangan is the CEO of DV Connect Brisbane, a statewide telephone service offering help and support to anyone affected by domestic or family violence.
I've been working in the field of domestic violence and child abuse for 40 years. Many women are living with domestic violence. They are married to men who have standing in the community. These are sometimes women who have standing in the community themselves.
I think it brings to light that it can happen to any community, be it in a wealthy community like Brookfield or a lower socioeconomic community. There's no barriers.
Sometimes women need to know that it's not a shame factor, that they need to reach out to the family. And it's important for the family to let them know that.
If anything can be taken from this terrible situation, she's become a poster girl for domestic violence. And as a consequence, we see what's happening in Australian government at the moment. So much more funding is being allocated to domestic violence issues. It is very warming to see that perhaps other women can benefit from campaigning and funding and awareness which has been generated from this terrible, terrible story.
In a fitting tribute to Allison after her death, the Allison's Gift Foundation was established by family and friends. The organisation assists young victims of crime by providing financial assistance and support.
It's generally a family in pain that is driven to activism that leads the country into a change of attitude. This is where these changes come from. It's the death, the tragedies that propel families to want to keep it focused. And communities feel a great sense of compassion for something that's led by people who are suffering.
Whilst she's gone, the goodness from her life has just become magnanimous, and it's just, that part of it is brilliant. I hope it gathers momentum, and I hope that people really get behind it. And I know the Brookfield community will keep it going because she was so well loved.
Yellow is significant to the foundation, as it was Allison's favourite colour. And the lighting of Brisbane Story Bridge on July the 31st, 2015, was in memory of Allison and other victims of domestic violence.
The lighting up of the bridge, the yellow, the flowers. She was so talented, she was intelligent, she'd had a really good career, and she gave it all up to become, you know, his wife and help him out with his business, and end up paying the ultimate price for it.
If anything positive can be taken from this tragedy, is that perhaps more awareness is being raised for other victims of family violence and the foundation that her friends and family have set up. And also we see what's happening within the Australian government is actually acting at the moment as well and devoting more funding to domestic violence. And it's really, you can really hope that from this case perhaps other women who are suffering in similar situations will come forward, even tell a friend, even a family member, just talk to someone about it so that something so extreme and tragic never has to happen again.